You know what's mind altering, Ben? Andrew Jackson survived over 100 duels, carried a bullet near his heart for 39 years, and somehow still managed to completely transform the American presidency.
That's such a wild statistic about the duels, Pappy, and the fact that he deliberately took a bullet in his most famous duel just so he could take careful aim at his opponent, that really tells you something about his personality.
Well, Ben, it definitely shows his determination. Here was a guy who grew up in poverty during the Revolutionary War, became a self taught lawyer, and fought his way to the presidency literally and figuratively.
Speaking of fighting, Pappy, his military record really made his career. The Battle of New Orleans transformed him into a national hero of vast proportions.
Mm-hmm. Though what's fascinating is that the battle was actually fought after the War of 1812 had officially ended. News just traveled that slowly back then. But you know what really transformed American politics? His approach to the presidency itself.
Oh, right. Wasn't his inauguration basically like a wild house party?
Exactly. When he opened the White House to the public, the crowd was so huge that they literally had to put the punch bowls outside on the lawn to lure people out. They caused thousands of dollars in damage, which was a fortune in 1829.
However, that chaos represented something bigger, this whole shift in American democracy.
Well, that's what makes Jackson such a complicated figure. He expanded democracy for white men, but his Indian Removal Act led to one of the darkest chapters in American history, the Trail of Tears, where approximately 4,000 Cherokee people died during forced relocation.
And didn't he completely ignore the Supreme Court when they ruled in favor of the Cherokee Nation?
That's right. When Chief Justice Marshall made his ruling, Jackson reportedly said, John Marshall has made his decision. Now let him enforce it. But here's what's really interesting. Just a few years later, during the nullification crisis, Jackson became this fierce defender of federal authority.
So he was fine ignoring federal authority when it suited him, but threatened to send troops into South Carolina when they challenged federal tariffs?
Exactly. He even threatened to hang his own vice president, John C. Calhoun, who was leading the nullification movement. However, his war against the Second Bank of the United States also reveals how his populist approach could backfire.
I've always wondered about that. How did taking down the bank actually hurt the ordinary people he claimed to represent?
Well, after he killed the bank and issued the specie circular requiring gold or silver for land purchases, it triggered the Panic of 1837, one of America's worst depressions. The very people he claimed to be helping ultimately suffered the most.
That's such a perfect example of unintended consequences. Although I suppose his personal life had its share of tragedy as well.
Oh, the story of his wife, Rachel, is heartbreaking. She died just before his inauguration, partly due to the stress of campaign attacks about their marriage. Jackson was so devastated that he wore a miniature of her around his neck for the rest of his life.
And didn't he have her buried in what was supposed to be her inaugural gown?
That's right. You know what else is fascinating? The whole spoils system he introduced, the idea that political supporters should be given government jobs. We're still dealing with the effects of that today.
That's something that changed American politics forever, though I suppose his face on the $20 bill is pretty ironic, given how much he hated paper money.
And that really captures the complexity of his legacy. Here's a man who expanded democracy while trampling human rights, who strengthened the presidency while sometimes disregarding the Constitution, who fought for the common man while sometimes making their lives more difficult.
So, Pappy, What do you think is the most critical lesson from Jackson's presidency?
Ben, I think it's that progress and regression often come hand in hand. Jackson demonstrated how democracy can be both expanded and restricted simultaneously, illustrating how populism can both empower and destroy, recognizing that complexity is essential for comprehending American democracy both then and now.